Hey guys, it's Christy and welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for joining me. Today I am so excited because we're going to be reviewing the brand new pastel palette from NATASHA DENONA. So before we get into it, I hope you'll consider subscribing to my channel before you leave. Give this video a thumbs up if you enjoy, and let's get into it. Alright guys, so this is the brand new limited edition palette from NATASHA DENONA. This is the outer carton, and what I like about this one so far is that the box is that beautiful soft touch matte kind of feel, which is like my favorite texture. I just love it. So this is the outer carton, and then we have the beautiful, beautiful palette inside. So on the front we have like that pink to purple kind of a gradient with that mint green, and the back is entirely mint green. I just think this is very pretty, and the palette itself is like a very matte feel as opposed to the high shine that she typically has. So this palette, again, this is limited edition. This is her midi size, so this retails for $65 US or 86 Canadian. So this is also made in Italy, as is typical for NATASHA DENONA. So let's open up the palette. This is beautiful. I love these types of tones, these types of shades. I don't typically wear these on the eyes a ton. I will say today that I'm probably not going to create the most out there kind of look with this, the most creative look, but I will be having a multiple looks one palette video coming probably next week. I just really want to get into this, and I want to try it out, and I want to get my review up for you guys. This palette looks absolutely stunning. So there is a lot of her cream to powder formulas in here, and the reason she did that is because pastel shades are typically a little bit harder to formulate with a lot of pigment, and we've seen that with some palettes that we have tried recently here on my channel. When she does her cream to powder formula or her wet dry formula, so it gives you that maximum pigment for that type of shade. So I love that. I love the idea behind that, and I personally love the cream to powder formula. So let's have a look at some of the shades. I am dying to get my fingers in here, and you guys know I am not a good swatcher, but I like to do this anyway. So the very first shade is Tulle, and this is a cream to powder. And it's a really, really beautiful baby pink, and again, very light pigment. The next shade is Illusion, and this is a brand new formula. This is like a sheer duochrome topper. That's how she described it. I don't know if it's duochrome, but it is like a very light, shifty pink. It's almost got like a teal shift. I feel like the shift will be different depending on what colors you pair it with. But this just looks so, so pretty, and I love that it's a brand new formula. The next shade is Mint Frost, which is actually a repeat shade. This was in the Tropic palette, which was limited edition. I don't think you can get Tropic anymore, but also if you're a BoxyCharm member, you may have received her Jubilee palette last year, and that also had Mint Frost. So again, that's this one. So this is Mint Frost is a standard metallic. Next is Bora, which is another cream to powder, and this shade looks really, really beautiful. Look at that. That is Bora. I could not swatch in a straight line to save my life, I swear. So again, that is Bora. The next shade I am really excited about. This is Dainty, and this is a duochrome sparkle. It looks so beautiful, like it's very pinky purple, and I feel like, oh, I love it. Okay. The next shade I'm kind of excited about because I've been dying to find a beautiful mint green eyeshadow that is actually pigmented. So this next one is called Brisk, and this is a typical creamy matte. I'm kind of surprised she didn't put this in a cream to powder, honestly, because I feel like this is a shade that's hard to formulate. Okay, yeah, and even looking at Brisk on my arm here, this is, again, it's very light. I really had to build that. It's beautiful though. It's just that if it's showing up as pale on my skin, you know, I'm incredibly pale. So, okay, the next shade is another duochrome, and this shade, look at that. How beautiful is that? Okay. I feel like you lose a lot of the effect of the shade when you swatch it out. So we'll definitely, when we try it on the eyes, that's when we're gonna know. The next shade is Starlit. And this one is also a duochrome. She was really into that duochrome life when creating this palette, and it's beautiful. It looks very red in the pan, but it's actually, well, it's kind of a red, but it's a bit more of a hot pink in my opinion. Next we have the shade Bellini, which is like a soft peach, and this is also just a classic matte. So one thing I will say about these shadows is that it might be, yeah, for these really pale ones, it would probably be really beneficial in order to get them to pop to, you'll have to build them up, but it may be very useful to use like a white base. The next shade is a Bubble. I'm running out of arm really quickly, but this is, that's a cream to powder, and that is pretty. I like that one. I'm definitely planning on creating like a pinky purple look today, but look at that blue. Oh my goodness. Okay, so the next shade is Limoncello, and this is another one that was in the Tropic palette and also in the Jubilee palette. Mint Frost and Limoncello, I'm pretty sure, are the only ones that really doesn't want to show up. Okay, I'm gonna flip my arm over to finish this out, but those are the only two repeat shades that are actually in this palette. But I never picked up the Tropic palette, so for me this really isn't a repeat shade. And I should have mentioned that Limoncello is a classic metallic. The next shade is Duet, and this is also supposed to be a duochrome. So this has a pinky, purple, and teal kind of a shift to it. That is stunning. That's absolutely beautiful. I can see that being my favorite shade. I thought for sure Dainty was going to be my favorite shade, but I really like Duet. Okay, next is Airy, and that's another classic matte. Okay, so this is another one that's really very light. It doesn't want to build too much. I can't get over Duet. That's beautiful. And next up, we have Zest. This is a shade I do not see myself using that often. This is like a lime green, kind of a yellowy shade. And finally, we have the shade Feather, which is, oh, it's more purpley than I thought. And it's going to require some building as well. So swatches don't tell the full story, but it does look like some of these are going to be very lightly pigmented, and you know, you might want to work with a white base in order to get them to show up, but we're going to try them out. As long as the formula is good, I don't mind something like that. You know, we had the Too Faced palette. We're actually going to talk about that one a little later because I want to do some comparisons. I think I'm going to start with the shade Feather. I'm going to take that one in the crease. Just so you know, I did already prime my eyes with my Milani eyeshadow primer, and I set it down with a powder. So again, just buffing Feather into the crease. And Feather is just a regular matte shadow. It's very, very light. On one hand, I'm kind of glad to see that these are lighter, slightly lighter pigmented kind of shadows, just because of the bright color story. This is definitely a color story that's out of my comfort zone, so I am kind of excited that they are lighter so I can kind of build them up as long as they perform well. Okay, I think I want to deepen that up just a little bit more. Now I'm going to go into Tulle. I also wanted to ask, because I do plan on doing a multiple looks one palette video, do you guys prefer when creators who do that style of video, do you prefer when they talk through the entire look, or do you prefer just music and then watching them create the look? Let me know. Yeah, Tulle is definitely steering it a little more pinky than I intended, but I'm definitely getting a lot more pigment out of Tulle. And I'm just trying to put that one a little bit deeper in the crease. I might go around the edges with Feather at the end. I'm going to take the shade Bora, and I want to really carve out that outer V. This shade Bora is really very pretty, but it's definitely lighter than I expected. I can see this palette also being a great companion to some other palettes. I'm not doing it today, but I really picture like a really pretty halo eye with this look. At first I was very overwhelmed with, actually, okay, I'm just going to take Duet all over the lid. So I was really overwhelmed at first because looking at the palette, I was like, this isn't the type of color story I typically reach for, that I typically get excited about. I want to review this palette. I want it because it's unique to my collection, but I was really kind of overwhelmed because I'm not the most visually creative person. So I was kind of worried about what kind of look I was going to create. And then looking at Natasha's Instagram, often I'll get inspiration from there, but it was all very editorial, which kind of does make sense for the type of palette this is, but this is turning out to be easier than expected. I really like this look. Duet is absolutely beautiful. Yeah, I'm really feeling Duet. That is a pretty shade. I cannot leave this look without using Illusion since it is a brand new formula. I'm gonna put that on the inner corner, and then I'm gonna kind of start to bring it out a little bit as well. It gives a pretty shine, but I feel like Duet was kind of fine on its own. Something I noticed about the Illusion shade, and this could just be my palette, but it looked like it already had a dip in the pan. Like, not that it had been swatched, like the texture was still perfect, but it was just kind of dipped. It wasn't flat. All right, let me pop off camera, throw on some mascara, and I'll be right back and we will do some comparisons. Let's talk about this palette. So overall, I really like the look I came out with. And like I mentioned, I was very intimidated by this color story. I wanted to review the palette. I wanted to test this color story. I was very intimidated because I don't tend to reach for a lot of color. That being said, when I actually got the palette in my hand and I started swatching the shades, I knew exactly what I wanted to do. And yes, I did the safe route with the pinky purple look, which is not something super new to me. That being said, we will explore that later on in another video, and I will play with a lot more color. But I still really like the look I came out with, and it was very intuitive once I got this in my hand. I will also say, because these shades are, even the cream to powders, which are supposed to give maximum payoff, are still pretty light and still require quite a bit of building. Bora looks like a pretty strong color, and that's what I have on my outer corner, and I built that for a while. So it still required quite a bit of building. That being said, I love that I have a colorful look on my eyes, but it's a very wearable colorful look. So I really do love that. And I didn't have trouble getting the shades to work. This is a standard Natasha Denona formula where it is more lightly pigmented than most of her shadows. The formula and the way she creates her shades worked so well together that this was very easy to work with. So that made me happy. The shades blended seamlessly together. I feel very confident, so I'm very happy with that, and I do feel more motivated to play with those blues. The shades that I'm kind of concerned about are Brisk and Bellini, because they are so light that they almost really don't have much pigment. I'm not super impressed by the new formula in Illusion. I thought that was going to be a lot more fun. I'm going to have to keep playing with it. I didn't love it. I used it as the inner corner, and that was pretty. And it is supposed to be like a sheer topper. That being said, I put it on top of Duet, and Duet looked prettier on its own, and it was more sparkly on its own. I didn't find that Illusion gave that shimmery topper kind of a look to the lid, so I'm gonna have to keep playing with that one. I am a little skeptical, but overall, I really like this so far. I think it's really pretty. I don't know, if you're not gonna use this color story, don't spend $65. However, if you don't have any pastels and you just really want some in your collection and you're really looking to branch out, I would recommend this, because this is an excellent formula if you're new to pastels, if you're new to color. This is an excellent formula to start with because it is so user-friendly and it is so good. Okay, let me do a couple of comparisons. So first, and very quickly, I was thinking of the shade Dainty, and this one kind of reminded me of Glitz from the Retro palette, but Dainty in the pastel palette. This one is Dainty, this one is Glitz. Dainty has a little bit more of a purple to it, so they're not as similar as I initially thought. That's the only comparison I had for the retro. Now, this is the Jubilee palette that was, I believe, a BoxyCharm exclusive. So this shade and this shade are both in the pastel palette. This one I'm not going to swatch. This is actually a very dark navy blue. It is a creamed powder formula, but it is super pigmented. And these two really don't compare to anything that's in the palette. But just know if you do have this, you do have 2 shades from the pastel palette. This is not one of my favorites that she's created because I don't find the color story very cohesive. If you look at the pastel palette, it does have a chaotic energy to it, but I can see these are my mint shades. If I want to create a minty kind of look, I've got some blue shades here. I've got pinks, and I'm going to use them to work together. Whereas this one, you've got pink, blue, and yellow, and I feel like you have to be really creative to make this one work really well. Okay, I do want to make a quick comparison between the pastel palette and the Too Faced Too Femme. So they're not twins, they're not identical, but color story wise, there's some similarities. One thing that I like about the Too Faced palette is that you do get this creamy shade, and you get some browns that kind of ground out the palette a little bit. If you're just wanting to dip your toes into the color, into the pastel, you can do that with this. I mean, you have these more basic colors to kind of ground it with and just use a pop of color. So I do like that about this color story. That being said, I did not like this palette. The pigment just is not there. Now, I did make similar comparisons to the NATASHA DENONA. So some in the new pastel palette are quite light as well. The difference is the textures. The textures are so much different. This one is just all powder shadows. There's not a ton of pigment, and you really can't change that. In this, there is a mix of different textures. There is her metallics, her sparkly shades, her creamed powders, and they're all formulated in a way that's going to work best, and the shades really work together as if they're kind of a team. I just find Too Faced formula to be very hit or miss, and this just wasn't their good formula. I will show you. So Brisk from the pastel palette. Okay, here are the 2 mint shades. These are almost the same. Almost the same. So this one here is from the Too Faced, and these are the closest ones from the pastel, so not completely similar. Yeah, they're not identical color stories, but they're similar enough. They're quite similar in price range. This one's about $20 more, but you get 14 shades in here, you get 15 shades in here, the pan sizes are much larger, the packaging feels way more luxe, and the quality is far superior of the shadows. So definitely recommend this over the Too Faced. I believe the NATASHA is worth the extra $20 or so you're gonna spend. I really do believe that. Now, another palette, and this is the last one, I promise, that was called to mind when I saw the pastel was the Mercury Retrograde from Huda Beauty. So the Huda palette has far more shades, of course. But what I do like about the Huda palette is that, again, like the Too Faced, it does have like a more creamy shadow, which I like for blending out edges. And you also get some more neutrally kind of browny shades. They're not really fully brown, but they kind of can be used to ground out the other shades a little bit. So I want to swatch the mint greens side by side. So I just swatched the 2 mint greens. So the mint in the Huda Beauty palette, that's this one, swatched, it's a bit darker, but the texture of it feels better, and it honestly swatches much better. This is Brisk from the pastel palette. I'm just going to show you swatches. So that's the difference in pigment and just the way they feel. Huda's felt softer and more buttery. So I just wanted to note that. And then I wanted to show you quickly Bellini versus Momentum. So this is Huda, this is Bellini. Bellini's leaning a bit more orange, but in my opinion, the Mercury Retrograde is a little bit better. I feel it fares a little bit better pigment-wise versus some of these Natasha shades. And then the other close similarity would be Cosmic from the Huda palette and Dainty in the Natasha palette. So that's kind of where the similarities kind of end. If you directly compare the shades in the Huda palette to the Natasha palette, the shades that are very close, so that mint green, Cosmic, like that sparkly pink, even the peachy nude shade, I think the Huda pastels are a bit better. Ooh, I hate to say that, but I think they're a bit better. That being said, they're also a bit deeper, but I think these are different enough. But I think if you already have this and you don't wear a ton of pastels, maybe just dig this one out again and play with this. This one is newer to my collection, but I do think the quality of those three shades are kind of better than what's in here. But that being said, that does not mean this is a bad palette. This is an excellent palette. And these are about the same price point. However, Mercury Retrograde is being discontinued. This one is brand new, but it's limited edition. Those are all the comparisons I really had to make, but overall, I really like this so far. I think it's really pretty. I love the look I came up with. I love that it's more intuitive than I expected. Some of the shades kind of surprised me. There is a lot of the cream to powder in here, so if you don't like that texture, you should probably pass on this one. Some of these, I don't know, she has her cream to powders and she has some classic mattes, but the classic mattes I feel like are so pale that they almost should have been that cream to powder. So there's that. Illusion I've got to keep playing with. I'm not as excited about it as I expected it to be. Duet is beautiful. I think I kind of ruined it a little bit when I put Illusion on top. I really want to play with these minty shades now as well. I really want to get into some of those blues, and I really want to play with Starlit. So I'm definitely very excited to keep playing with this palette and get to know it a little bit better. I really like this. It's not my favorite Natasha palette. The quality is still there. However, you're getting pastels, you're going to get lighter pigment. But honestly, if you're going for something pastel, you typically do want that lighter pigment. So the only thing I would suggest is perhaps use a white base like the ABH eyeshadow primer. That's a really good white base for the types of shades that don't have a ton of pigment. So when you're using these, that'll really help that color pop to be on a white base. So I'm definitely going to try that too in my next video with this one. But overall, I really like this. Again, if you're unsure or you don't really play with a ton of color, I would probably pass. Is it my very favorite Natasha palette so far? No, but do I still like it? Yeah. I do. I like it quite a bit, and I'm going to keep playing with it. I will, of course, update you guys at the end of the month, but overall, I really, really like this. I think it's pretty. The outer packaging is super, super beautiful. The shades, all very beautiful. Can't wait to play with them all. I wish I could play with them all in one day, but so not sorry I purchased this. I'm kind of glad. I am pleasantly surprised. I definitely didn't think I would love this as much as I do. And I think I forgot to mention, this does have a 24-month shelf life, so pretty standard for all of Natasha's palettes. I am definitely excited to add this one to my collection of midi palettes from Natasha. I am such a big Natasha fan, so I am so excited about that, but that is it for me today. I hope this video was somewhat helpful. I find first impression videos can be very confusing sometimes, but that is my overall thoughts right away. I like it. I think it's pretty. It is more lightly pigmented than I expected from Natasha, but at the same time, these are pastel shades. But the quality is there, so if you were worried about quality, don't be. It is there and it is beautiful. So that wraps it up for me today. Thank you so very much for watching. If you're new to my channel, I hope you'll consider subscribing before you go. I do upload at least 3 new videos every single week, and that is it for me today. Thank you again so very much for watching, and I will see you in my next one. Bye!